Okay, we're live. It's gonna be a quick stream, folks. I got a lot going on. I'm packing to get ready to go to D.C. tomorrow. I'll be there for the march on Saturday. But there's a lot going on. There's a lot happening today that I want to bring you up to date on. It's just a couple things just happened today. It's what I call what I've taken to calling the Great Rollback has already begun. Man, you know, if Pennsylvania's where it's going to start, okay, but states like Michigan and Arizona, they're going to have their part to play. Georgia, okay, but Pennsylvania's the big one, all right. Pennsylvania's the one where they stopped their counting in the middle of the night in Pennsylvania. They stopped their counting and they set that Democratic machine that runs that state set about trying to erase a 700,000 vote gap. 700,000 vote gap they tried to erase. And it took them a couple of days, but they did it. But the problem with that is they had to engage in so many blatant acts of fraud to make that happen. Uh, so and it's just happened in a lot of states. There's like 6 states where this stuff has been going on, this vote fraud stuff. So now the repercussions of this are coming out. There's starting to be audits called for. Okay, how many of you knew this? Okay. Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia. Yeah, I want to make sure that I don't leave one out. Okay, they're all under the control of the GOP. The GOP runs all those states. They control both state houses and all of these battleground states. So in Michigan, they just called for an audit, and I want to make sure everybody understands the difference between an audit and a recount. So a recount, you just have the same people that were in charge of the first count recounting all of the same ballots. It's just to make sure that that first count was accurate. That's all a recount is, okay? Now, what we really need to see in these battleground states is not a recount. We need to see audits. Let me explain why. In an audit, they're not just sitting there counting the same ballots, the same people counting the same ballots they counted back on, for that first count. In an audit, they're examining the ballots first before they count them. They have to establish when these ballots arrived. Did they arrive before the legal deadline or not? Are the ballots legally filled out? Like, is the signature missing? If it was a mail-in ballot, is the security envelope missing? I mean, so they actually check these ballots to see if they're valid. With the recount, they're just going to count all the same ballots they counted the first time. So we don't want recounts, we want audits. And so Michigan, they just called for an audit. The state senators there, the Republican state senators, because like I said, the GOP is in charge of the legislature in Michigan. They're in charge in Georgia. The Secretary of State of Georgia already talked about how there's going to be an audit in Georgia. So that's at least 2 states that we've had so far. I think also the GOP legislators in Pennsylvania requested to their governor that Pennsylvania have a recount also. So that's 3 that I know of. Michigan, Georgia, and Pennsylvania, the GOP legislators there have requested audits. And thus far, of course, none of the Democrats in charge of those states or the people that run the election system have agreed to that. But the pressure is building. So I want to point something interesting that happened today. Okay, Tracy Beans just put this up at Uncovered DC. An intervener or somebody who, okay, when there's a lawsuit filed, uh, sometimes like different parties intervene. They try to intervene in the lawsuit on behalf of one of the people involved in the lawsuit or the other. So this lawsuit filed in Pennsylvania is between the Trump campaign and the Democratic Pennsylvania election officials, Kathy Buttroy and Josh Shapiro, who is the Pennsylvania Attorney General. Okay, so those are the two main people involved in the lawsuit. Well, some Democratic interveners filed they made their own filing on behalf of the Democrats. So when Tracy was digging in to the filing today, she discovered something amazing. These people are actually in their affidavits that are part of this legal filing, which is supposed to be it's supposed to help the Democrats, you see. But in their filing, they're actually admitting that they broke Pennsylvania election law. Let me drop this in the chat here, the link. Okay. They're actually admitting in this lawsuit, I'm going to go over some of it. These affidavits okay, first of all, let's establish this. It's illegal for public officials to alert a voter who filled out a ballot in a way that makes that ballot invalid, to go alert that person and to give them a chance to fix the ballot before the election deadline. Okay, that's why you're supposed to be careful how you fill your ballot out. They have all these rules there. You're supposed to read it carefully and sign it and put it in the security envelope. There's a lot of steps you have to follow. And if you send it in and you don't have the security envelope, or you don't sign it, or it's not postmarked by the day of the election, okay, then it's considered that ballot is considered invalid. Okay. Well, one of the things that was coming out is that Democratic Party officials. Now, this was not done for Republicans. Understand, the Democratic election officials were only doing this in Pennsylvania for Democratic voters. They were calling up Democratic voters and saying, "Listen, your ballot didn't have the security envelope. You need to fix this so we can count your ballot. Or you left your signature off of your ballot. You need to fix that. And come give us your signature so we'll count your ballot." Now, they did this only for Democrats. They weren't calling up Republicans and saying, "Hey, you want to count your ballot? You need to come fix this." So it was obviously partisan, and it's against the law. You're not allowed to do this. And they say right there in these affidavits that the Democratic Party officials are calling them up and giving them instructions and helping them to cure an invalid ballot. It's called fixing or curing a ballot. So they've been curing ballots in Pennsylvania for Democrats, only Democrats. And now, and for some reason, I mean, I still can't believe this happened. For some reason, these people seem to think it was a good idea to admit they had done this in this filing today in the Pennsylvania lawsuit between the Trump campaign and the Secretary of State of Pennsylvania. So it's like, talk about shooting yourself in the foot. Why would you admit, well, yeah, sure, we broke Pennsylvania election law. We're good at ignoring the law when we don't like it. So we're just going to put right here in this filing and drop it in the middle of this lawsuit between the Trump campaign and the state of Pennsylvania that we were actively breaking election laws by curing ballots that were invalid. And we were only doing it, it was only happening for Democrats. It's like to make up this big gap between Biden and Trump, they had to pull out all the stops. They could not go halfway. They had to call in all their markets. They had to try every dirty trick that they know of to close that gap, because it was about 700,000 votes at the time all the shenanigans started. So let's go to USD 20511. I want you to look at the second point, 2B down there, okay? If you're an election official who in any election for federal office, and understand they're talking about ballots that have to do with, they don't just include state and local elections, they include federal elections. So that is a federal election ballot. Now, any election official who in any election for federal office, and this is read point 2, knowingly and willfully deprives, defrauds, or attempts to deprive or defraud the residents of the state of a fair and partially conducted election process by the procurement, reading point B, procurement, casting, or tabulation of ballots that are known by the person to be materially false, fictitious, or fraudulent under the laws of the state in which the election is held, shall be fined or imprisoned not more than 5 years or both. Now, if you're a Pennsylvania election official and you understand it's the law of the state of Pennsylvania, you can't call up a Democratic voter and tell them, you alert them, hey, your ballot's invalid, you need to get down here and we'll help you fix it. That's against the law. You can't do that. Okay? So you are suborning the procurement of an invalid ballot. That's what you're doing. And so you're running afoul of this federal code right here. I mean, so it's not only against the Pennsylvania state election law, you are introducing what you knew was an invalid ballot. To get that ballot cured, you had to break Pennsylvania election law. And there's no way you can say, I didn't know that ballot had any problems. You called the person on the phone, or you texted them, and then you contacted them, and you had them take action to cure their ballot. Okay, so it's just mind-blowing that somebody was talked into doing it here, to doing this. They filed this today. They filed it themselves, and they're admitting they broke Pennsylvania election law. It's unbelievable. Like Tracy says in she commented today. Let me see if I can find it. She could scarcely believe what she was reading when she was first looking at this filing in Pennsylvania today. It's like she couldn't believe it. She stopped and she had to read it like, I think she said 4 times. I'm looking for that tweet. She said they had to read it 4 times. She had to read it 4 times. Yes, I found it. She said she had to read that thing 4 times before she could accept the fact that, yes, this actually says what she thinks it says. Dropping that in right now. She said, we'll have video soon describing this absolutely baffling turn of events in the Pennsylvania lawsuit. It's so unbelievable, I almost thought I was wrong and checked myself 4 times. I am not. They are submitting evidence they broke the law. Now, let me remind you all of something, okay? Attorney General William Barr released a memo to the public, I believe it was 2 days ago, in which he stated that the Department of Justice was going to be investigating examples of election irregularities and frauds, and he admitted at the end of that letter, he revealed he had already approved several cases, the launching of several cases to investigate fraud from this election, which occurred on November 3rd. So Barr has been activated. Barr has been released, and he said that at the time he made that memo public 2 days ago, several U.S. attorneys have already been assigned cases, and they are already investigating. And you look at the massive amount of fraud that went on in Pennsylvania, and I have no trouble predicting that at least one or more of these cases has to do with these Democratic machine politicians in Pennsylvania trying to make a 700,000 vote gap between Biden and Trump disappear. And we found out things like, there are thousands of dead people, provably dead people, voted in this election. That many of the mail-in ballots were I think Jeff Carlson had a tweet to this effect. They were sent out. Okay, now remember, these mail-in ballots were sent out through USPS, right? Weren't they sent out through USPS? Right. Okay, so these ballots were sent out and returned on the same day. But wait, it gets worse. Let me find Jeff's tweet real quick. He had a breakdown. Okay, a bunch of these ballots were mailed out and returned according to the dates on the ballot. They were mailed out and returned on the same day. Okay, that was 35,000, nearly 35,000 ballots were returned on the same day they were mailed out. But there's an additional problem. 23,000 ballots have an impossible return date. The date is earlier than the sent date. And I'm going to link that story at the Epoch Times. Right now I'm going to link that in the chat. And then I'm going to put it up. It's impossible that a ballot can be returned before it's sent out. The date it's being returned has to be later than the date it was sent. Okay, common sense tells you that. So you can find the story up at the Epoch Times. I'll link directly to the story now. So there are all kinds of irregularities going on here. There's all kinds of things going on that don't make any sense. And Pennsylvania is just one of them. There's stuff that didn't make any sense in Georgia, stuff in Michigan. They had something like some counties where you had 200% participation rate, which is impossible. Okay, so all these irregularities are happening, and we already know Barr has U.S. attorneys, okay, that some have already been assigned, and there are more coming, because investigations are beginning, they're starting, okay, and what we need to understand here is that, okay, Barr is one prong of this what I call the great rollback. He's going to have U.S. attorneys digging into this, and from evidence that we've already seen publicly, proving a lot of this fraud is not going to be hard. Okay, it's not a lot of it is blatant. Okay, early on we just had stories about poll watchers that were tossed out of the building and they weren't allowed in. Okay, and all things of that nature. Now we know about vote switching that happens. There's video of Trump losing about 120,000 votes, and all of a sudden, in a state, and Biden gains 120,000 votes. Okay, that's stuff like that. But then there's stuff like all these dead people that voted, and there's ballots that were ordered segregated. Oh, this is another issue, Pennsylvania. Justice Alito ordered them to follow their own state law. an order. He issued an order to the election officials in Pennsylvania to follow the state law, that the Secretary of State and the Pennsylvania Supreme Court did not have the authority to arbitrarily change Pennsylvania election law. That's the legislature's job. So when the Pennsylvania GOP filed with the Supreme Court, please have these ballots that come in after the legal deadline segregated from the other ballots that came in before the deadline. So Alito had no problem doing that while they were trying to hash this out. So he wrote an order that had to segregate the late ballots. Then they found out that Bachvar and Shapiro basically lied to him, and they early on before the election happened, they made noises to Alito that they were going to follow his instructions and they were going to segregate those ballots and they weren't going to be counted until this was all hashed out. Then he found out, Justice Alito found out in a subsequent filing after Election Day, that the Secretary of State and the Attorney General of Pennsylvania basically conned him, and that they did not segregate these ballots. The ballots ended up being counted. So, in what I think is an unprecedented step, Justice Alito had to issue a second order to Pennsylvania officials: segregate the late ballots. So this is another issue that's come up. They suddenly pretend that they can ignore the Supreme Court, and they suddenly think that the Philadelphia court and the Secretary of State or whoever can just write law all by themselves. Oh, we don't like this election law, I'll just change it. And send directions to all the counties in Pennsylvania. Yeah, we don't like this law anymore, we're not going to follow that law. Just do this instead. Okay, that's not how it works. So there's all kinds of issues in play in Pennsylvania right now. And I think Pennsylvania is the big one. That's where the great rollback is going to start. Well, all these things start coming together: the vote fraud and the fact that this is just remember my point. It's a two-pronged attack. It's not just the courts, okay? Yes, you have things going on in the courts, lawsuits being filed, evidence being shown to the courts, counter lawsuits, okay, and people making claims and stuff, and the courts are going to hash that out. But there's a second prong to this thing that everybody's forgetting, because it was 2 days ago Barr said, okay, I've activated the DOJ, we're looking into this, and then he went quiet again, right? He came out, made an announcement, released a memo, and then what happened? He disappeared again. He's good at that, okay? So all this stuff will be going on. When they're ready to come out with something, we'll know, okay? But a lot of people are already focusing on the court cases, and they're forgetting there's another prong to this counterattack, this rollback, and that's the Department of Justice, where Barr is on the job quietly. I remember the whole first week after the election, everybody was running around, where's Barr? Where's the DOJ? They didn't even know that Barr had already had several U.S. attorneys digging into the fraud claims, looking into this and investigating it, until he got around to revealing that in his memo when he was good and damn ready. Okay, nobody heard a thing about it, nothing leaked about it, okay? And since he put that memo out and he went silent again, nothing is leaked about the investigations we now know are going on over there. So that's the way it should be. They'll come out and tell you when they're ready. So let's look at this one. Okay, looking back at the Michigan State GOP senators, they're requesting a full audit. This is just going to build and build and build. Okay, all these things are happening. You have to understand something. This is something I'm going to end with this. People have tried to make the deep state look like it's some all-powerful, all-knowing, all-seeing, all never-losing, monolithic, big brother type organization. a government within a government. And nobody challenges them and survives. And, it's like they got their shit wired tight, man. Okay? And I want you to think about that. What's the right word to use? This vision that a lot of people have about the deep state, okay, is that they can't be beaten. They always win. They really know what they're doing, okay. And I'm telling you, the more time that passes, the more you're gonna see that the deep state is anything but what people claim to you it is. These people are stupid. These people are incompetent, okay. I've studied people like James Comey and Andrew McCabe and Peter Strzok and Bruce Orr and Stefan Harper. I've studied these people for 3 years now. Okay, genius is not a word I would use to describe these people. All right. And so people have, I don't know, they keep putting this idea out there, the deep state wins in the end. They'll just not last you, They can't beat them. They'll just keep going. I want you to remember that. Watch what unfolds over the next couple of weeks. Okay, as the great rollback happens and Trump keeps winning, and in courts, and you're going to find out why those 300 judges were so important. Okay, 300 federal judges. And most of those judges, about 250 of those judges, are on the higher levels of the federal courts. You're going to see why that was so important, that Trump and McConnell get that done. And they got it done, okay? They got it done. They have the 300 judges, and you're going to see the effects of that. Trump knew what they were going to do. He always knew this was going to go to the courts, and it was going to go to the DOJ. He knew that. Like I said in the last video, okay, there was no realistic way he could stop them from doing what they were going to do. Short of declaring martial law in 6 states and taking control of the elections away from the local officials, okay, there was no way to stop what they were planning to do, even though they telegraphed it repeatedly what they were going to do. Now, I admit I was wrong about this. I thought that when the red wave hit, the gaps between Trump and Biden and the gaps between many of these GOP candidates and the Democrat candidates were going to be so big they wouldn't dare try it, okay? And then I admit I watched flabbergasted that week from Tuesday all the way to 2 days ago. As I watched Pennsylvania, okay, this yes, you understand, this had never been attempted before in American history, American political history. Nobody had ever attempted federal election fraud on this massive scale. Okay, 700,000 votes. Nobody had ever attempted that. Okay, most elections that I'm aware of where they were close and Democrats managed to flip them, we're talking at the most maybe 10, 12,000 votes, guys. Okay, but 700,000. Okay, I'm sitting here sometimes I just shake my head. I still can't believe they tried it. I can't believe they tried it. And of course they effed it up and they left their fingerprints everywhere. And they did it ham-handedly and they did it incompetently. Okay, and like I'm saying, Trump and his team in the federal courts are going to have no problem whatsoever proving that fraud took place in these 6 or 7 states. And the DOJ, when these U.S. attorneys dig in and they seek grand juries and the grand juries investigate, they're not going to have any problem demonstrating that massive fraud went on here. Okay, so I'm not worried about that, okay, and I know what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks, okay. It's just, we've got a lot to look forward to. We've got the March for 45 coming up. on Saturday. I will be there. I hope if any of you are out there that you live in the area or you can travel to D.C., I would encourage you to do that. We want to make such a demonstration on Saturday that the country will never forget it. I'd love to see 1 million people on the mall, more than 1 million, because it's time to get loud. It's time to stand up. Yes, they were incompetent about it. Yes, the deep state stepped on the rake again, okay? And they messed up. They telegraphed what they were going to do. Trump knew he couldn't stop them, so he settled for being ready to catch them at it. Okay, just like he's caught them at just about everything else that they've tried. Okay, don't forget the Hunter Biden laptop is still out there. They still have those investigations going on. Durham is still out there. A lot of people say, yeah, well, the election's over. Where's Durham? Well, he's coming. We'll hear from Durham when he's ready. So I want to end with this. The way a lot of people view the deep state, no matter how many times the deep state messes up, no matter how many times these people do something incompetent and step on the rake and hit themselves in the face, people still have this idea that these people have some type of superpowers, and they don't. They don't have superpowers, okay? I looked into these people. James Comey is an incompetent doofus. Andrew McCabe, as you saw, I mean, if you bothered to watch the congressional hearings, okay? I don't watch congressional hearings or dog and pony shows. I watch highlights after it's over. Because I know most of these people in Congress are not going to ask good questions. They're going to showboat, they're going to grandstand, and they're going to ask dumb questions and not really going to learn anything. So I watch highlights after it's over. I don't sit there and watch 4 hours of testimony. Okay, and Andrew McCabe contradicts himself. He says all kinds of stuff. It turns out to be crap. All right, so these people are not smart. They perjure themselves repeatedly. We're just waiting for the hammer to drop. That's all we're waiting for at this point. So, I am not on Twitter now, but I'm told that I have a huge fan who goes by the handle Brian the Great. I would really encourage you to follow Brian the Great if you don't follow Brian the Great. So I might be back on Twitter someday. I might not. I don't know. I think it depends on when Twitter gets its 230 protection stripped from them. Which, once Trump is declared the winner and this election's behind us, and he's completely unleashed, that's when we're going to see a lot of this stuff happen. He doesn't have to worry about getting reelected anymore. He doesn't have to worry about, them trying to impeach him or any of this other crap. Okay, so we'll have to wait and see. It looks like my suspension is permanent. I have appealed it. I haven't heard anything from them. Don't even tell me what rule I supposedly violated to get myself tossed off the site. Okay, but I'm on Parler. I'm on Parler's John Strike. I'm on Clout Hub. I'm at the Quad Verum Forum. It's John Strike. I'm also on Locals, and I'll be starting a Rumble account. I'll start putting these videos up on Rumble. So I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket. If you're just on Twitter and YouTube, then you're really limiting yourself. I would encourage you all to have multiple social media accounts. Don't limit yourself just to one place. And that's all I have for today. Now I got to go pack. I'm leaving at like 6:30 in the morning, flying to Baltimore, and then I'm driving down to D.C., and it'll be great. I get to see Tracy and all my friends. It'll be awesome. And then we're going to march for this president. We're going to let all of America know that Trump base is not deserting him, that we're going to stand behind him. He spent 4 years fighting for us. He left it all on the field for us. And so I can go to D.C. and march for him, and I will. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you next time. God bless.